I'm Vijay Mahajan from the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation and the Rajiv Gandhi Institute of Contemporary Studies. And we're trying to make good use of this venue by having discussions of the kind, book launches, other talks, and anything of contemporary relevance. And we are very thankful that on a Saturday evening, several of you are here. Please spread the word that this venue is becoming more and more active, and this already today is the third event. We had an afternoon consultation on the draft national education policy. Then we had an event by Sehmat on the Jallianwala Bagh, the talk by Professor Irfan Habib. And now we have Who is Bharat Mata? And may I invite, first of all, Sri Hamid Ansari, former Vice President, to come to the dais. Purushottam ji, please escort him. And may I also invite Dr. Mahesh Rangarajan, who's now teaching at the Ashoka University, but he's well known to all of you as an eminent historian. And Seema, these days editor-in-chief of The Citizen, but once again we know her from several of her earlier engagements. The book has been published by Speaking Tiger, and may I invite Ravi Singh, the publisher, to come and conduct the proceedings. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you, Mr. Mahajan. Wonderful to know that we can actually have a wonderful space like this. For more events, we'll be making use of this. Thank you very much. And thank you for your hospitality this evening. And thank you very much, all of you, for being with us for the launch of this timely and necessary collection of writings by and on Jawaharlal Nehru, compiled and edited by Purushottam Agrawal, who has also written a brilliant and hugely insightful introduction. This is a book on, and in a sense by, one of the chief architects of free India, a political and intellectual sensibility that shapes the nation in its early years of independence, directing it towards a project of humanity, equality, and a modernity that is not only about gadgets and space travel, but also about ideas and temperament. Sorry, this sensibility, as Purushottam Agrawal points out in his introduction, was a product of a vision that was fashioned and lived by several leaders of the freedom movement. And it achieved what many had thought impossible, the creation of the world's largest democracy in one of its most impoverished countries at the time. And it was not the false and dangerous democracy of mere numbers, but one that had robust, independent institutions to check the excesses and injustices of a system that privileges the many over the few. It was a democracy that, in its own imperfect way, flourished, while all around it, dictatorships, theocracies, and civil war were the norm. So this is, in that sense, also a book about India, the many ideas of India that Nehru articulated and championed, and which we need to guard and champion today when they are under unprecedented attack. The selections Mr. Agrawal has made from Nehru's writings and speeches and from articles written about him give us a clear sense of Nehru's mind, often highlighting aspects that many of us miss. His instinctive and nuanced understanding of India's civilizational spirit, for instance, or the seeming paradox between his agnosticism and his deep interest in religions, his reverence for Gandhi and yet his sometimes extreme unhappiness with and frustration with the Mahatma's beliefs and some of his actions, his strong beliefs and convictions, and yet his ability to accommodate opposing points of view, his fierce pride as an Indian, and yet his refusal to be blinded by narrow, aggressive nationalism. There are entire worlds to be discovered in this collection, and we are fortunate that Mr. Agrawal chose Speaking Tiger to publish it. Thank you very much. And we are very grateful this evening to Mr. Hamid Ansari, former Vice President of India, for agreeing to release the book, and to Seema Mustafa and Mahesh Rangvirajan for agreeing to discuss it with Purushottam Agrawal. Could I please request Mr. Ansari to formally release the book? Sorry, we should have the file. Where are the files? So, could I request Mr. Ansari to see if we could, and Seema after that, if we should start the discussion.
Yes, I'm familiar with this situation in another context. Professor Purushottam Agrawalji and friends, at a time when studied forgetfulness has reached epidemic proportions, a diligent exercise of recalling the life and times of an iconic personality in recent history is to be commended. Professor Purushottam Agrawalji has done so in this very readable volume with an eye on a new generation of citizens and readers. Nehru was a prolific writer. He did this in jail when he was a freedom fighter. He continued it when he shouldered the burden of office. His selected works now run into two series, the first consisting of 15 volumes and the second still unfinished in 78 volumes. By a happy coincidence, the 79th volume is to be made public today or tomorrow. And this covers the period up to the 30th November 1962. So another 2 or 3 volumes can be expected to cover the remaining period. Last year, the Jawaharlal Nehru Memorial Trust took the decision to digitize the whole set and so make access to them more readily available. Jawaharlal Nehru was India's first Prime Minister, a close aide of Mahatma Ji, an important leader in the freedom movement, a thinker and a visionary who read and reflected on the history of our times, a modern man who appreciated the relevance of science and technology in solving the problems of national development, and a citizen of the world who visualized the role that India could play in the Committee of Nations. On each of these counts, Nehru's imprint is indelible. Professor Rajni Kothari, our most eminent political scientist and social activist of an earlier era, wrote an essay entitled The Meaning of Jawaharlal Nehru a few weeks after Nehru's death. It began with the following words, and I quote him: "The greatest contribution of Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of independent India, to the development of the Indian nation was neither the policy of non-alignment nor the conception of the 5-year plans, but the practical achievement of providing a durable basis to India's democratic institutions and of endowing them with an aura of legitimacy. It is an achievement more lasting and pervasive than any of the doctrines by which he used to move India's intellectuals from time to time. Nehru's life work was not so much of having started a revolution as of having given rise to a consensus. Curiously, he did not himself see the real significance of his work. End of quote. Jawaharlal Nehru was a realist and conscious of the challenges confronting him. When the French philosopher André Malraux asked about the greatest difficulty faced by him since independence, Nehru's response was candid. I quote him here: creating a just state by just means. Perhaps too, creating a secular state in a religious country. End of quote. In a society of immense diversity, he sought to give shape to his vision through a democratic polity based on rule of law and a secular state structure. To him, secularism was both an empirical proposition reflecting the plural reality of our society, as also a normative principle of being good in itself. He sought to persuade his fellow citizens to cultivate a scientific outlook and eschew superstition and prejudice. Nehru's role in decolonization and in the great global crises of the 1950s has been written about at some length. His role was appreciated by some, resented by others. Particularly terse was US President Harry Truman's comment on India's role in the Korean conflict. Truman said, "Nehru has sold us down the Hudson. His attitude has been responsible for losing the war in Korea." End of quote. Nehru's successes were many. Time and experience have also shed light on his limitations. 7 decades after independence and over half a century after Nehru left the scene, a younger generation of citizens needs to be reminded of his multifaceted personality and his contribution to the shaping of modern India. Professor Agarwal's book is a good introduction to this process. Jai Hind.
We'll ask the author, Purushottam Agarwal, to say a few words, and then we'll have the discussion between the three of us, along with Mr. Ansari, maybe.
Respected Ansari ji, Mahesh, Seema and friends. It's rare for a person like me to not to be able to say something. I have been a professor all my life, and like every professor, I'm a compulsive talker. But this is a moment when I feel emotionally charged, excited, as well as depressed. Because, like any Indian of my age, I took Nehru for granted. he was very much part of our mental firmament, with all our frustrations and angers against him or his ideas. This is true of my older generation also, as you can see in the introduction to my book. I never heard my mother and father saying anything good about him when he was alive. And I have seldom seen them as sad and as crying as I saw them on the afternoon of 27th, 1964 May. So, but for last some years I have been studying Nehru and Gandhi in somewhat systematic way. And for last couple of years, or in fact almost a decade or even more than that, with the arrival of social media and all that, the kind of things which are being circulated and the kind of credulousness with which they are being received really surprised me and saddened me. Saddened in the sense that it is not good on part of an individual or on part of a nation to be ungrateful. So far as Nehru, Gandhi and the whole galaxy of those leaders is concerned, it seems that the present day India has chosen to be ungrateful. That is really, really sad. Secondly, this is an unprecedented time in the history of humanity, probably, certainly in the history of this country, that ignorance is not a matter of embarrassment but of supreme confidence. We are living in the times where you do not feel hesitant about being stupid, you feel proud of it. This is an unprecedented moment, so far as I can, with little bit of my knowledge of history and all that. I mean, people always have been stupid, always have been lacking in knowledge, but they have been hesitant about it. They have been willing, therefore, to learn from those who know better. Today, I know better than anybody else. Whatever be the facts, whatever be the truth, whatever we think. So in this post-truth era, in this era of alternative facts and alternative, what it is called? Yes, alt-facts, alternative facts and relative truth. I mean, there is someone who claims that Nehru and Nehru alone was responsible for whatever happening in Kashmir today. I mean, Nehru was heading a cabinet. The decisions were being taken by cabinet. And the great patriot, Mr. Sama Prasad Mukherjee, was party to all the decisions, and he never expressed any protest. He never resigned from the cabinet. So you are part of a decision, but you don't own that decision. And you celebrate this. It is being said that he mishandled Kashmir. Yes, he mishandled Kashmir in such a way that the Kashmiri people resisted Kabilis and they resisted Pakistani forces. And today the great leaders are handling Kashmir in such a wonderful way that the same Kashmiri people are resisting Indian army. And yet we are supposed to celebrate this. But Nehru was not merely a politician. If you read Nehru, Nehru was a poet at heart. Nehru was deeply rooted in the tradition and culture of India. Being rooted does not mean being unnecessarily proud. Being rooted means being proud and critical at the same time. I mean, I don't want to take much time because, as I told you, I have all the bad habits of professors. Don't know about good habits. But the last thing which I want to say is this. I am essentially a student of Hindi literature. Contrary to perceptions being created, Nehru was quite a lot interested in Hindi literature. In fact, when he was in jail in 1920 in Agra, he studied Ramcharitmanas with the help of the great Tulsi scholar Ram Naresh Tripathi. And those days, he used to write a kind of daily or bi-weekly report of his progress to Gandhiji. And in one of such letters, Ansari Sahab, he says something about Tulsidas, which is so true and which is so deeply moving. He says that Ramcharitmanas to me actually is the spiritual autobiography of the poet. Ramcharitmanas, according to Nehru, is the spiritual autobiography of Tulsidas. I have not come across a more moving and more profound description of Ramcharitmanas than this, even from a professional critic of Hindi literature. So this was Jawaharlal Nehru for you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I hope you will read this book and will enjoy it, will like it, and if you dislike it, will criticize it, certainly with civility and not with the prevalent virtue of these days, that is stupidity. Thank you very much.
So I think it's an invaluable book, and the introduction by Purushottam is absolutely amazing. It's tremendous, and it has to be read not just by every student of history, but every journalist or every one of us who pretends to be a journalist today. But the selection of Nehru's writings, and for me, of course, a favorite is Nehru or Nehru. And I just want to take one quote out of your book when he writes his Chanakya, where he says, "By electing him a third time, we shall exalt one man at the cost of the Congress and make the people think in terms of Caesarism. We shall encourage in Jawaharlal the wrong tendencies and increase his conceit and pride. He will become convinced that only he can bear this burden or tackle India's problems." It's an amazing, collection, and the kind of selective writings that you've taken, I think, really sort of make us think about today, where we never ever thought that we'd be sitting and talking about Jawaharlal Nehru as if we are here to defend him. Never thought that there would be a day where we would be questioning, or there would be forces who are questioning his contribution to this country. Purushottam, before I move to Mahesh and get into the serious thing, I think what was very interesting, and for me it was a revelation, that you were in the RSS Shakha. And tell us about the last day when you left. I think that conversation was amazing.
It's working, I think. It's working, no? Yeah. Well, I'm surprised that you don't know this. This is part of my biography, which many friends know, particularly courtesy a film made by, what's his name, Bachani, this filmmaker based in New York, who made one film about, first he made a film, Boys in the Branch. Then he made the other film, Men in the Trees. So in that Men in the Trees, he interviewed people like me and Desraj Goyal, who were once upon a time in RSS and all that. Well, I was in RSS for a couple of years, as I have written in this book, almost in my childhood or early youth. And the day you are mentioning, it so happened that we were told every day, almost every day, that Nehru was the worst thing that could have happened to India, and particularly Hinduism or Hindu Rashtra or whatever it is. He was un-Indian, he hated Hindus, he actually described himself Hindu by accident and all that. And things were so crude, and probably our generation was a bit more sophisticated than the present Twitter generation to take these crudities simply. But well, it went on every day, and I started having my doubts. And then once I happened to read Singha, that is memoirs by Yashpal, who was a great Hindi writer and also a comrade of ours. I was a voracious reader. My dear friend Ajay is sitting here. और मेरी माँ को कई बार जाके लोग ये शिकायत करते थे कि चलते चलते पढ़ता रहता है सड़क पर, किसी दिन छूट खा जाए. So I used to read everything indiscriminately, everything. So I read this book, and then I realized that Bhagat Singh, who was the symbol of manly virtues, Bhagat Singh, who was the real fighting Hindu, and who hated anything associated with Gandhiji and his non-violence and all that, reading Singhavlokan, I realized that yes, Bhagat Singh criticized Gandhi and Nehru sometimes, but with the reverence, with great respect. And in fact, in Singhavlokan, Yashpal has quoted from that article in which Bhagat Singh compares Subhash Chandra Bose and Jawaharlal Nehru and recommends Jawaharlal Nehru as the icon for the youth of India. So I took my confusion to my Shakha Charaj. Bhagat Singh is talking like this about Nehru. So he was very unhappy. He could not explain anything. So he took me to a senior functionary who was visiting occasionally our Shakha and who was already told about my deviant behavior. So I was taken to him and he tried to explain things to me. And he told me that, look, he said that I am a Hindu by accident. So I told that, well, I don't know whether he said this or not, but in any case that is true. All of us are, whatever we are by accident. I mean, nobody gave a kind of letter of choice to God to become a Hindu or Muslim or Mard or Aurat or whatever. The man was really, really very angry. And he said that, look, learn Indian culture, respect your elders, stop reading the communists like Yashpal and their poisonous book. Communist was a very popular phrase in RSS circles. Kaum ko nasht karne wale. So when coining this phrase communist, they conveniently forget that kaum, a parakiya word in their terminology, is sitting pretty with the nasht, a sautiya word. So when I told him that, look, I have these confusions, I must understand this. So he said, forget about all this. I am told you are very good at kho-kho. मतलब मैं इतना मोटा उस समय नहीं था जितना खेलता था. तो यू आर वेरी गुड एट खो-खो. तो मैंने कहा हाँ वो तो ठीक ठाक खेल लेता हूँ मैं. भागो जाओ खो. अब खो-खो खेल जो लोग जानते हैं वो समझते होंगे इस बात को. तो खो. That was my last day at Sakha. Because whatever kho-kho or kabaddi, whatever, if you cannot answer simple questions like this, and if you go on insisting that Bhagat Singh was, I told him that, look here, Yashpal was with Bhagat Singh. Yashpal was part of Hindustan Socialist Republican Army. And he is saying something. So either you contradict it and say that, look, somebody else has contradicted Yashpal or something. I mean, how can I take your word against Yashpal? So well, that was that. After that, I have continued to put or wear this badge, fortunate or unfortunate, of a child Swayam Sevak of RSS. So,
another person who had contributed a lot was D.R. Goyal, right? He was with RSS before and then...
There's no comparison between me and D.R. Goyal.
No.
D.R. Goyal was at a very senior level.
Yeah, I know.
And he understood the functioning of RSS, I believe, like nobody else understood.
Nobody else did, yeah. So Mahesh, let me begin with a question that Purushottam has actually said in the book, saying that if you read the book, he hopes that we'll be able to answer his question whether the inclusive, enlightened and genuinely modern idea of India was a Nehruvian idea. And I mean, it's a difficult, I expect you to answer it very briefly, but also a corollary to it would then be whether it's worth protecting.
Well, I will take refuge behind the quotation of Jawaharlal Nehru, though it's not in the book. When asked by D.F. Karaka about the Nehruvian worldview, he said that no such thing existed. He explained that he was a follower of Mahatma Gandhi, that he had tried to absorb the philosophy and teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, but was adapting them to the specific conditions of the time. And I think this is related to this fascinating observation. आपने कहा कि उन्होंने कहा कि आप खो-खो खेलो, कबड्डी खेलो, गिल्ली डंडा खेलो. He asked you to play these games and not ask questions. This is related to something fascinating quote, very well known one, and I think this will, in a sense, pose the problem. When Gandhiji says here that I have always said not Rajaji, not Sardar Vallabhbhai, but Jawaharlal will be a successor. You have gone on to quote quite rightly. When I am gone, he will do what I am doing now, then he will speak my language. But the sentence in the middle is the interesting one. He says what is uppermost in his mind, but he always does what I want. So this ability in democracy to hold your own, but to listen. So there's something in Jawaharlal as a Democrat, that he has as his guru, someone whom he differs with on so much, the economy, technology, society, but they agree on some vital issues.